Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. And as always, I want to start by thanking those that sent in a lot of these tips, and that would be Jason Dance, Chris Fellon, and Barrett Peterson. Guys, thank you so much. If you have a tip for me, please send it my way, and I'm happy to give you a shout out here and also on my nationally syndicated radio show, which actually will be airing starting tomorrow. Now, with that, let's dive in because there are a ton of breaches this week and a ton of terrifying things as well. But we're going to start with car rental giant SIXT. That's SIXT. Now, they are a German-based vehicle rental, car sharing, ride-hailing service provider with 2,000 locations in 105 countries. And SIXT announced the other day that they suffered a cyber attack on April 29th that forced them to restrict all access to their infrastructure, except for those basically crucial things for continuing business, like their main website or the apps for their mobile users. But according to German media, most car bookings from that Friday morning about a week ago or so were basically down, and they had to use pen and paper essentially to achieve those orders at their location. So we'll see what's going on there, but heads up to you if you are about to or have rented a car from SIXT, we'll see what's going on. Also, a real quick, an Illuminate education update. I might have done these last week. I'm not 100% sure because last week I told you about 2 districts in Colorado. This week there are another 2 districts in Colorado, but instead of saying the names, I just learned the district numbers. So if they are the same, I apologize. That would be District 70 and District 12 in the state of Colorado. So heads up, parents and educators in those districts in Colorado. Moving on, I want to talk about tractor giant AGCO, that's AGCO. They got hit with a ransomware attack and shut down some of their manufacturing facilities and had to send their staff home. Employees at its plant in Marktoberdorf, Germany, and I totally butchered that, were sent home, as well as assembly line workers and production line workers in Beauvais of France. So heads up to those locations. The attack likely impacted a number of agricultural machinery brands as well that AGCO owns, including Challenger, Fendt, Ferguson, Massey, and Valtra. And there you go. Obviously, this is getting into, as the article stated that I'm taking this from, we are in the run-up to the crucial time period of the year for crop farmers. So if they go down and crop farmers need new tractors, supplies, whatever, that is going to be obviously a huge thing. Now, AGCO says it's still investigating, has not identified what family of ransomware has been attacked by, or whether they would pay or not. But heads up to you, if you have anything to do with AGCO tractors in any which way, shape, or form, heads up to you farmers that may be watching or listening to this. Moving on, let's talk about Super VPN, Gecko VPN, and Chat VPN. You really do get what you pay for. Now, on May 7th of this year, a database containing the credentials and personal details of 21 million users was leaked in a Telegram group. Now, what's interesting about this dump is that it exposed the data of VPN users, basically from popular VPNs like SuperVPN, Gecko VPN, and Chat VPN. Now, this was a 10 gig data dump containing full names, usernames, country names, billing details, email addresses, randomly generated password strings, premium status, and validity period. Now, a further probe indicated that the leaked passwords were random, hashed, or salted without collision. Therefore, each one was difficult and more difficult to crack. So that obviously is a good thing. Unfortunately, it had to leak. A majority of these email IDs, about 99.5% of them, were Gmail accounts. But researchers that were going through this believe that the dumped data was only a subset of the full dump, probably focusing on those Gmail users. So there you go. Heads up, if you use SuperVPN, Gecko VPN, or Chat VPN, I think you're going to want to switch. Moving on, let's go to the country of Greece and talk about Greece's National Transparency Authority, or NTA. They were forced this past Friday to remove a report on migrant pushbacks in the Aegean Sea as it was improperly redacted, and that's obviously very embarrassing for the NTA. Now, the authority removed the report, which it posted online this past Tuesday, but it failed to properly hide the names and personal details of those who were interviewed during this investigation on this entire immigrant or migration issue that Greece is going through right now. So hopefully nobody will be affected by that. But If you've migrated to Greece or are planning on migrating to Greece, you might want to check in with them to make sure you weren't caught up in there, and now some extremists may actually have your information. Moving on, let's talk about the Drug Enforcement Agency, or DEA, in the United States, because they say that they are investigating reports that attackers gain unauthorized access to an agency portal that basically taps into 16 different federal law enforcement databases. Now, on May 8th, Krebs on Security received a tip that hackers obtained a username and password for unauthorized user of esp.usdoj.gov, which is the law enforcement inquiry and alerts system managed by the DEA. Krebs on Security also shared information about this alleged hijacked account with the DEA, the FBI, and the Department of Justice, which houses both agencies. The DOJ is that umbrella. Now, the DEA declined to comment on the validity of these claims, issuing only a brief statement in response. I'll obviously keep you up to date on that, as apparently Brian Krebs is on it. Moving on, let's talk about the city of Cincinnati. If you've ever worked there, heads up, because about 2,000 current employees and their dependents, plus an unknown amount of former employees for the city of Cincinnati, were impacted by a data breach involving census data, and that is according to the city's director of communications, Rocky Mers. Interesting name. Now, the city discovered on April 19th a request for proposal, or RFP, for dental and vision services inadvertently included census data and posted it on the city's procurement websites. The RFP was originally posted on April 8th, so it was up for 11 days. Now, both personal information and protected health information, including names, home addresses, demographics, and insurance information, were shown in this census file. In some cases, social security numbers, dental claims, and dates of birth were also breached as well. Per the city, credit cards and banking information was not released here. The breach only affected those with vision and dental insurance through the city, so AFS, CME, and FOP, and those without that insurance are in the clear. So if you work for the city of Cincinnati, current or former, heads up, you definitely want to check in, and here we go. Moving on. I want to give you an update on the Capital One 2019 data breach. They have now agreed to pay $190 million to resolve claims that had jeopardized customer information in 2019. The settlement benefits around 98 million Capital One customers whose information was compromised as part of the 2019 breach. And at 198 million, you're probably getting $30, so good on you. Moving on, let's talk about the government-run Ontario cannabis store in Canada. And I find that to be perfectly honest, because I can't think of anybody here in the United States that would want to go buy their weed from a government-run store. But Canada, you're a different animal. Here you are. Now, the Ontario Provincial Police, or OPP, yeah, you know me, is investigating what the OCS alleges is the theft of sensitive business data. The OCS, or Ontario Cannabis Store, confirmed a breach in an email to the province's retailers late Tuesday, this past Tuesday. The leaked data displays the sales of every cannabis store in the province for December of 2021, as well as the store name, license number, sales days, kilograms sold per day, units sold, total inventory at the beginning of the month, and sell-through rate, among others. The breach data also shows whether each store is independently owned as part of a franchise, or whether it falls into another category, such as being part of a national corporation. The leak does not involve consumer data, but if, let's say, physical burglars are able to get hold of this information, they may know which one has the most weed on hand and go to town. So heads up to you, government-run, apparently, or government-related Ontario cannabis stores. Moving on, let's talk about Horizon Actuarial, there you go, can't say that word today. I don't know much about this one, but it is a ransomware hit, and it's apparently affecting more than 1 million people. I will give you more information as it becomes available, but that's all I've got right now. So heads up, Horizon Actuarial, haha, did it that time, and there we go. Moving on, let's talk about the OKCIC, or the Oklahoma City Indian Clinic. They got hit with the ransomware attack. Now, the OKCIC has informed 38,239 patients that their protected health information was access during the incident. Apparently on March 10th, the provider reported that, quote, technical issues have left the care team without access to certain computer systems. Now, this attack led, obviously, the OKCIC to shut down its automatic refill line, mail order service, and its pharmacy department. All patients were told to call the pharmacy for needed refills, which would require the individual to provide the needed prescription information. Basically, also with things like drug dosage, chart number, provider name, and directions with government-provided ID. Meaning, if you had a prescription, I hope you kept the packaging and the bottle, because you're going to have to read it to them if you accurately want it refilled. So hopefully the OKCIC will get back on their feet. Heads up to you, Oklahomans. Moving on, let's head over to the UK and talk about the Cornwall Council. A council member has accidentally published the details of 5 school children in a publicly accessible meeting document. Now, Cornwall Council has apologized for the data breach, which included these children's names, addresses, and dates of birth. Now, it made the error when it published these online documents for a meeting of its school transport appeals committee. The council said it was, quote, published in full on the council's website as a result of human error. Now, the meeting was scheduled for this past Monday to discuss the appeals made by parents in relation to the school transport for their children, which is why it was published. So heads up to you if you've got one of 5 kids in the Cornwall area of the United Kingdom. Moving on, let's talk about AA Traveler. Now, attackers have taken names, addresses, contact details, and expired credit card numbers from the AA Traveler website that has been used between 2003 and 2018, meaning they had an ongoing data breach for 15 years, getting people's credit cards essentially ripped off, and here we are. Now, AA Travel and Tourism General Manager Greg Lighton said that the data was taken in August of last year, and AA Traveler found out in March. So I guess I have to back up a little bit and say that essentially credit cards from 2003 to 2018 were stolen in August of last year. So it wasn't an ongoing breach. It was a one-time hit, apparently left wide open. Now, he said that a lot of the data was not needed anymore, so it should have been deleted and the breach could have been prevented. Basically, this affected hundreds of thousands of customers. I don't have a firm number, but if you've ever used AA Traveler, you definitely want to make sure that you are no longer using them. And if you use them between 2003 and 2018, you are affected by this data breach. And finally, and we have a few different finalies for you here. This is kind of like a sad update. This is kind of like, this really stinks, to be perfectly honest. I reported on this one a while ago, but now we've got some more information. I am talking about Lincoln College in the state of Illinois. Now, if you didn't know, Lincoln College, a predominantly black college in Illinois, is now going to close. And basically, they just closed this week after 157 years, saying that it simply could not survive the financial challenges of the coronavirus. And then on top of that, a massive ransomware attack last year. And to quote David Gerlach, the college's president, the loss of history, careers, and a community of students and alumni is immense. Now, reached by email on Monday, Mr. Gerlach declined to comment further. Founded in 1865 and named for Abraham Lincoln, Illinois is the land of Lincoln. The college has survived the 1918 influenza pandemic, multiple recessions, 2 world wars, not to mention all the other wars we've been in. And here we are. Obviously, that's horrible. So here it is. The current pandemic, I should say, led to a drop in enrollment and forced the college to make basically, costly investments in things like technology, because obviously everybody's going remote in order to try to keep enrollment up. And then in December of 2021, a ransomware attack basically knocked out their infrastructure, locked out the data that allowed them to operate, including things like recruitment, retention, fundraising, all those kinds of things. And it basically Lincoln College did not say how much it eventually had to pay to regain access to that data, though Mr. Gerlach told the Chicago Tribune that it paid a ransom of less than $100,000. Obviously, if you're hurting and you're hurting hard, $100,000, even for a college, could be simply too much. Now, the ransomware attack originated in Iran, according to him, talking to the Tribune, and so there you go. Now, when the college's access to the data was restored in March, projections showed, quote, significant enrollment shortfalls that would require transformational donation or partnership to sustain Lincoln College beyond the current semester. They basically needed $50 million to stay afloat. That money did not materialize. Lincoln College is out of business, obviously hurting hard in the pandemic, but the bullet in the head was the ransomware. And that is just absolutely unfortunate. And I have to say, I have been in meetings like that where, you've got 3 generations of a family that basically say, we are not going to survive this event. We can't afford to pay this ransom. We can't afford to fix all of these things we were hurting to begin with, not necessarily for the pandemic. Some of these happened before the pandemic, and here we are. It's always a heartbreaking thing. So my heart goes out to basically anybody that has anything to do with Lincoln College, past or present, and unfortunately, I can't say future. Moving on, we've got a couple more for you. We need to talk about the Chinese hacking group known as Winti or Wintai. Now, basically, they have been stealthily stealing intellectual property assets like patents, copyrights, trademarks, and other corporate data, all while remaining undetected since 2019, and this is according to researchers who recently discovered them. Now, Wintai is also tracked as APT-41, which basically means Advanced Persistent Threat 41, and they are essentially a cyber espionage group that is believed to be backed by Chinese state operators and basically operates on behalf of national intelligence interests for China. Basically, the discovered cybercrime campaign has been underway since at least 2019 and has targeted technology and manufacturing firms in East Asia, Western Europe, and here in North America. Now, the criminal operation is known as Operation Cuckoo and was discovered by analysts at Cyber Reason, who revealed a new malware deployed by this group, the mechanisms they leveraged for the intrusion, and the intricate payload delivery method they use. Now, I'm not going to nerd out and get into the specifics of this, but I want to kind of go through an overview of this. The financial losses incurred by Cuckoo is actually really hard to determine, but the figure should be on a scale that puts this operation among some of the most damaging cyber campaigns ever. Now, this is a pretty stealthy operation. The infection chain observed in Operation Cuckoo begins with exploiting known and zero-day vulnerabilities in things like ERP platforms, meaning you haven't updated that big database you're using to collaborate with in your organization. They are taking that vulnerability, they are exploiting that vulnerability to get in. And once they've gained access into the network, the attackers perform reconnaissance using built-in Windows commands, meaning they're using things like netstart or, they're dropping to DOS, all those different kinds of things, because those are not going to basically be tripping up antivirus solutions or endpoint detection response systems, as we have seen. Also, they've been able to execute things like batch files being in scheduled tasks in Windows without tripping threat detection systems. So, how do you defend your network about this? Despite indictments of Wintai members announced in the past couple of years by the U.S. Department of Justice, we've known about them for quite some time. We just didn't know the sophistication until recently. No matter how many technical reports analyzing its tools and tactics have been published, this group remains active and industrious, and the Chinese government is not extraditing any of them whatsoever. Now, Cyber Reason, the ones that discovered this, believes that due to the complexity, stealth, and sophistication of Operation Cuckoo it's very likely that Wintai compromised many more companies than Cyber Reason was able to verify. The best defense against this kind of stuff is to update absolutely everything to the most update version that you can. Maintain that, obviously monitor your network traffic, use segmentation in your networks, meaning isolating groups from one group. So if one group gets hit, they can't infect the data or the rest of the company, those kinds of things. These are things that we obviously have a huge problem with. And as we are looking at this, you can see over the years how intellectual property has essentially been stolen, repurposed, and reused in Chinese manufacturing and products. It's a huge problem we have inside and outside cyber espionage. But obviously, with everything being online, cyber espionage is an incredibly critical component of that, and that obviously is a huge thing. And finally, and this one actually is incredibly deeply concerning, we have to talk about Cameron, Texas, or rather Cameron County in the state of Texas, because an investigation is underway after the Cameron County Elections Department said that the personal information of staff and poll workers was breached in January of this year. Now, according to a statement from the department, names, social security, and driver's license numbers were accessed through EasyVote. This is the company that provides poll worker management software. This doesn't run the election system, but as you're managing your poll workers in your county or your district, EasyVote is one of those places that you can go to do that. Now, the data was then made available on the internet. EasyVote is in contact with law enforcement regarding this breach as they are investigating. And in this politically charged climate where we are seeing a portion of the population literally level death threats on people on things like school boards, education boards, election boards, all those kinds of things, this is incredibly scary. Election judges could be targeted, especially if they have the wrong political affiliations. And that is of deep concern as we are basically coming into the midterm elections. We just went through what is probably the most contentious election in U.S. history since at least the Civil War, if not that one as well, in the sense that, there is a healthy part of this population that believes the election was rigged, even though basically we have seen no actual evidence hold up in court on that. And basically intelligence agencies and independent investigators have all concluded that, yeah, there was nothing. We can't find anything, but that hasn't slowed a lot of this rhetoric down. Now, I don't care what you believe. I'm not getting political, but in order for a democracy or an democracy to actually function, it needs to have a free and fair election. If we are threatening poll workers, if we are threatening election judges, if we are threatening anything regarding elections so that we can either scare people away so that we can control the vote and how the vote is counted, or we can basically slow down people getting to the polls so not all votes can be counted in time, these are things that we really need to look at. And so if there's a data breach of poll workers out there, I would be very terrified if I were a poll worker. And I'm not saying that in a hyperbolic manner. There are people out there, literally in the school district that is in my neighborhood. That Board of Education during the pandemic was actually receiving death threats from parents over things like mask mandates. So much for rational conversation. So this is obviously a deep concern. This is a data breach that potentially has lives on the line because, as we've just recently seen in that just awful and horrific incident, in Buffalo, New York yesterday, these people exist and these people are motivated. And that's a very terrifying prospect. So if you're an election judge, one, thank you for your service. I hope everybody is doing everything they can to ensure that the elections are fair and honest and secure, as well as your security as well. So please don't give up hope. Most of this country is with you on that. And those were your breaches of the week. Let's just say you were affected. I think we were all affected this week. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.